I should get some lunch. What should I have? Should I get some pizza? Oh, I hope Spider-Man doesn't grab it off the rooftop like that other guy did. Welcome back to Spider Week. Now, in this episode, we are going to be talking about the second Spider-Man movie in the Sam Raimi trilogy, thusly known as Spider-Man 2. Now, this is a return to Spider-Man by Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire, and this time around, Peter Parker is facing a lot of dilemmas. He's having trouble with trying to balance out his life from his work life, his spider life, and his relationships with Mary Jane and Harry Osborne and a bunch of other different characters, while at the same time we have Alfred Molina playing Dr. Octavius, or Doc Ock, in this movie. He wants to make a self-sustaining fusion reactor that is able to power huge cities with only just one battery. And that is where things go wrong when he starts to turn into, well, Dr. Octavius, by having several mechanical squid-like arms become fused to his spine and his brain, and thus so he begins his crusade to try to pick up all the pieces where he left off and recreate this magnet, only this time much bigger and much badder. And also at the same time, we also have Harry Osborne, who, after being shaken from the events of the first Spider-Man and the death of his father, seeks out to try to find the man who killed his father. And when he finds out, the rest of the trilogy becomes much more interesting. I'm not gonna lie here, this is actually a really, really good movie. Rewatching it again for the first time in some years, I have to admit, I have to admit though, I do really think this movie is a great sequel. But why is it a great sequel? Well, the first thing I have to point out that is almost kind of obvious is that the reduction of his powers is due to the fact that he can't balance his life. There's something internal that's going on with him that creates the imbalance that he is seeing in his powers. He can't use his powers because of the stresses that come from being Spider-Man as well as being Peter Parker. And he has to learn to choose which one he wants the most. Does he want to have a life with with Aunt May and Mary Jane and his friends, or is he willing to sacrifice those things that he wants in order to become a hero that he needs to be? And this is something that is really this is something that I think is probably the best part of the movie, is that the whole situation with Parker is very, very, it's something that kids as well as adults can relate to. You have to be able to give up some things that you really, really want in order to become a much better person. And that's something that he in turn does. And it's not only him that does it in this movie, it's the city of New York. See, once Spider-Man loses his powers effectively in the second act of the movie, people start to question, where's Spider-Man? Where did he go? Where's our savior? Where's our protector? Where is he? And people have grown a disdain towards Spider-Man. They've lost a lot of confidence in themselves. And that's also something that Peter Parker also does himself. Is that once he loses his spider powers, he has no confidence enough to be able to save a lot of people. And it's through a series of events afterwards that he learns to gain more confidence in himself. And the one particular scene that I could really point out where the two sort of collide with each other is this train scene.
Nice and easy to go down. Slower, gently.
Is he alive?
He's just a kid. No older than my son. It's all right.
We found something. We won't tell nobody. It's good to have you back, Spider-Man.
This train scene is one of the most iconic scenes I have seen in a film ever. It is where the 2 points of contention in a movie collide. You know, you have the city who has given up hope, but Spider-Man had also given up hope, and while being on the same level at the same time and being eye level between a person that is perceived to be a god and the citizens of New York is something that renews a lot of hope and a lot of faith inside of the hero, the figure that they have come to take pride in, the person that they put a lot of faith in protecting the city. And that is something that I really, really want to stress with this film, is that there is a lot more depth to this film than I initially gave it. Sure, you get a lot of good action sequences, which, by the way, I mentioned last time that the CG in the last movie wasn't really up to par with what, modern day does. But I feel that over time, between every single one of these movies, the CG gets a lot better. And I think this is probably one of the best CG works for 2004, at least. Now, another thing I also forgot to mention in previous reviews is that the Sam Raimi trilogy was executively produced by none other than Kevin Feige. That's right, the Tapestry Man, the head honcho of Marvel Studios and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, had a hand in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Which is something that, immediately, to me, when they announced Spider-Man was going to go into the MCU, was something that I took pride in, because I think, his work with Spider-Man really, I do think that he would do a good job trying to produce a Spider-Man film in the MCU, and I have yet really to see whether or not it actually pays out, and I'm not counting his cameo in Civil War as being a sort of thing, but, that's just that. But continuing on with some more positives, I do think that this time around, Harry Osborne gets a little bit more to do. He is obviously frustrated with the fact that with the supposed fact that Spider-Man killed his father, and he's been obsessed with him all this time. And there's another good scene in this film where they're at the planetarium at the gala, and Harry Osborne just pretty much goes crazy on his best friend Peter, because he knows that Peter Parker takes pictures of Spider-Man, and so he's like, where's your best friend, huh? Bring him to me. He's like, no. You know, I think that's a really good confrontation between someone who is growing mad with revenge and someone who does not want to, you know, seek out to be the person that he lays his revenge on. You know, that's something that I really do admire. If it's a couple things I have a problem with in this movie, are a couple of things. First off, I think Mary Jane, once again, is just another useless character, and people may justify, well, she tried to save Peter Parker for Doc Ock. What many people don't realize is this happened. Yeah, I don't think she's I don't think she's a very good character in this trilogy. She just kind of seems a little bland, a little bit one-dimensional. She does try to, you know, grip with reality, you know, like, what if I do marry this guy and not be with Peter Parker? And it's kind of a weird little subplot, but I didn't really mind that subplot. It doesn't really play up a huge relevance in the story. You could have either taken it out or left it in. It wouldn't really make a difference whatsoever. Another thing that I really find a little bit bad about this film is this one sequence in the elevator.
Cool Spidey outfit.
Thanks.
Where'd you get it?
I made it.
Looks uncomfortable.
It gets kind of itchy. It rides up in the crotch a little bit, too.
That one sequence goes on for so long in the movie that it really breaks the pace apart, and I think you probably could have shortened that down. I do like the idea of him just going in the elevator, but for a full minute and a half, that's a little bit too long. I don't think that was necessary at all. So, as I said before, the villain of the film is Dr. Octavius, played by Alfred Molina. And I do think that he is pretty much a spitting image of him. Granted, he doesn't wear a silly costume like the Green Goblin did, and he's not wearing the same costume as in the comics, but I do think that he's pretty much a crazy Dr. Octopus. And may I say, he has a lot of really good lines in this film about love and keeping your feelings way down. It would become a illness and a sickness, which does kind of play into Spider-Man's dilemma in this film, you know, seeing how he's losing his powers because he doesn't have the ability to confess what he wants to confess to Mary Jane, thus he loses his powers. Granted, there's a whole other myriad of factors that play into that, but I do think that happens in the film. Now, and speaking of Dr. Octavius, there is one scene in this film that I think is very Evil Dead-esque. There's even kind of a little Easter egg of a chainsaw in this scene that I'm going to be playing now, but it reminds me so much of Sam Raimi's earlier work with Evil Dead, and just take a look at this scene.
As you can see, molten metal penetrated the spinal cavity and fused the vertebra at multiple points, including the lamina and the roof of the spinal column. We won't know the extent of the damage until we get in there, so I suggest we cut off these mechanical arms, slice up the harness, and if need be, consider a laminectomy with posterior spinal fusion from C7T1 to T12.
We're ready, Doctor.
Anybody here take shop class?
The cinematography in this movie is still good as ever. I still feel like I'm swinging through New York with Spider-Man, and that is something that has become a constant in every Spider-Man film, even the bad ones, where the cinematography for when you're with Spider-Man is still something to be beholden. It's still fun. And even with the Amazing Spider-Man reboot that happened after Spider-Man 3, they still kept the motion of the camera going with the character. That's always something I really admired about all of these films so far, is that the cinematography is still good. I still like the cinematography in every single one. Also in this film, we also get introduced to Dr. Connors, or aka the Lizard. Now, we don't really get to actually see him become the Lizard. In fact, the Lizard never even shows up throughout the entire trilogy, and that's only left to the reboot of the Spider-Man mythos. But it is kind of fun to see, Dr. Connors in the flesh in a movie. And as a Spider-Man fan, I really do like the Lizard. Granted, he's not the best villain of all time for the Spider-Man, Rogues Gallery, but I do think that he's pretty much one of the stronger characters in my opinion, if you were to place him up against some other street-level villains. Now, there's also a moment in the movie with Aunt May that I really do enjoy, and it's a scene where Aunt May is talking about heroes, and I really do like this monologue, and I'm not going to show the clip of it. It's in the movie. It's when she is packing up her things to move out. She's moving to an apartment, and she's talking to Peter Parker about the importance of Spider-Man and the importance of a hero, what it means to a younger generation, what it means to pretty much everyone to have a hero. And it's one of those monologues that I really get attached to. It's something that is very well done that I don't really think a lot of superhero films do. Granted, DC's been doing a lot of that with like the Dark Knight trilogy and Superman or Man of Steel, where they talk about, oh well, you don't know how important you are. But this is like kind of indirect. It's an indirect way of kind of saying that to the main character. Again, Aunt May still doesn't know that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and in fact, she never really knows in this entire trilogy. But, again, overall, I think this movie is a great sequel, and it's definitely one of those films that definitely deserves its title as being one of the best Spider-Man films of all time, even some of the best comic book films of all time. So, with that being said, I'm going to give Spider-Man 2 an A+. Thank you guys so much for watching a continuing story on Spider-Man Week, and I hope to see you all in the next issue, where we discuss a Venom that may or may not have been needed. A Sandman who is on the run from something, and a pissed off Harry Osborne. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next video, webheads. Excelsior!